Welcome, everybody, inside the coach's office. I'm your host, Dan Murphy, alongside my co host, Brian Barnes. And, Coach, a good week of Tigers baseball. And we got a great guest on with us tonight to dive into the state of the Detroit Tigers as well as their minor league system. But before I introduce him, Brian, how was your week? How was your weekend?
Yeah, it's great. I had my first over 40 baseball game Thursday night, and proud to say it was a team win. We got a victory, and I contributed with a couple hits. A little sore, but it was fun. It was fun to get back out there, and then yeah, like you said, a great week of Tigers baseball. We can't think of the last time. I mean, April or last July maybe, where we felt like really good about things, or after. Playoff series win last year against Cleveland. But yeah, good week of Tigers baseball, and excited about our guest as always. And he's here to talk us up a little bit and talk me off the ledge as a fan.
Yeah, really an incredible week of Tigers baseball, going 5-1 this week. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive into it. Our guest tonight from Tigers Minor League Report, returning guest, friend of the show, Rogelio Castillo. Roger, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So as I said, Roger, 5-1 this week. They entered this week off a 4-21 stretch. One of the worst months of baseball, the month of May, really in their history. And they entered the week as the worst team in the American League. Had to go out to Tampa, who was the best team in the American League. And this is why you just can't predict baseball. They go in there and sweep them. Unbelievably, go in and sweep them, and they come back home and take 2 out of 3 against Seattle, another first place team. And suddenly the vibes are high, and there's a lot of positivity around this ball club. A lot of guys coming back, a lot of pitchers coming back. Do you feel, as we talk tonight, that they've turned a corner and that they may be able to get back into this thing?
Absolutely. And I think it starts with the game today against Seattle, because the fact that here you are, the Tigers down in the seventh inning, it's down 4-1. They had that error by Green after the whole Flaherty had a really good start. And like looking at his numbers are better than his ERA. His FIP is at 296, so he's pitching better. Just a lot of bad luck for him. And they clawed their way back. A guy like Winslow Perez, who 2 weeks ago was literally the subject of the talk of the town because the way he celebrated after a loss and all that stuff. He comes through with a clutch triple, gets stuck at third base. You're like, oh, here we go again. Tigers threaten but do not score. And then Kevin McGonigal. I mean, when Munoz walked that first batter, I was like, they have a chance. And that's when I felt like, but today's win, I think, was a very emotional one because the entire series, Seattle and Detroit, just you could tell they don't like each other at all. You saw McKinstry and Naylor after Naylor got picked off. Like just the amount of anger towards these two teams is there, and it had a play. I hate to say this cliche, and I really don't like to, but it did feel like a playoff vibe this weekend. And you have the Twins coming up on Tuesday. It's not the same team that got swept by them just over a month ago in Minnesota, so it's time to return the favor. But I thought today was kind of a turning point, and if they lost today, my tone would be a little different. But the way they clawed and scratched their way back today was very, very telling.
So it's kind of strange you say that because I in a weird way I felt the same thing. I'm like, okay, you lose this one and that 4-game winning streak, and then a couple of bad habits the last couple of days that got them into this problem in the first place throughout the season, right? Not getting guys in from third base, less than 2 outs, things like that, clutch hits, whatever, bullpen falling apart. Like those were, coming back a little bit. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this is, we got that false fool's gold a little bit and we're feeling good. And this is more the normal, but I'm with you. Like to have their 21-year-old rookie stud, like a big at bat, like now, instead of saying, oh, okay, they're back to their losing ways, it's now they've won 5 out of 6, 2 series in a row against 2 really good teams. It's amazing what that one at bat has done because there are still signs that scare me a little bit, right? Like the moves AJ Hinch is making with pinch hitting just hasn't been working, right? And I think that's a fair assessment. And you're not getting a lot out of the guys that they got things out of last year. Zach McKinstry, Perez, and Jahmai Jones now, and Torkelson. Like they are who they are. And I mean, we're coming up to the 70-game mark pretty soon. And I mean, it's getting to be like this is who they are, unfortunately. And that scares me a little bit. With as excited as I am for they're playing, really well this week, that scares me a little bit. And I made the comment to Dan, like, God, I feel like they got to go on like a 15-5 run right here to really get me jumping again. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all, Coach, because I look at – here's the thing. It's not just Cleveland. I mean, the White Sox are playing really well, and the White Sox are really good too. Like, a lot of people are oversleeping on the fact that the White Sox can beat you in many different ways this year. And I was outside of their Vargas and Montgomery. They have some really good pitching, and I think they have better pitching. They're deeper there, I say, than the Tigers are at this point with their farm system as well. So you have to overcome the White Sox, who you play later this month again. So that's going to be at home. So that's going to be a big tension series. And I really think that it really depends on how they do against Cleveland. Minnesota and Cleveland are this next stretch of games here is really important, because if you can handle these two teams, then you're like, oh, okay, well, this division is, I mean, the division is not great. We all know this, but they really, the signs you're talking about, Coach, I'm with you on that, because my biggest thing that's been frustrating to me is, not in addition to, it's more the bullpen, because I mean, Drew Anderson when he's capable. I mean, that kick change is really good, but then sometimes he hangs over a pitch. You're like no. So the bullpen, and if they get the pitching back, I'm curious to see how Hinch is going to handle this as guys get healthy, as Verlander comes back. Mize is set to pitch in Clearwater on Tuesday. You have Skubal going to probably do another start or what have you. So that to me is, if the Tigers are at full strength by the end of the month with the pitching, then, I mean, there's, of course, the Bob Nightingale, here we go again. Oh, Skubal's going to be part of trade rumors, and we got to deal with that, nonsense for the next month or so.
Right.
How they're going to handle that, I think, is going to be very – I'm with you. They really, really need to go 15-5 and really take care of business against the division.
And that leads into the next question, Roger. I really am fascinated what they're going to do with the pitching staff. As Verlander, Skubal, Mize, eventually you're going to get Job as well into this pitching staff. Who do you think is going to get bumped into the bullpen? Who do you think is going to get bumped in the bullpen? And who do you really think should get bumped in the bullpen? Because there's going to be some really tough decisions for Hinch.
It's a tough question. I mean, Dan, I try to look at the numbers as much as possible. And you look at the, in terms of what Melton is, what Montero is. Montero has really saved their season in a way. Like, if it wasn't for Montero, who knows how worse off they would be right now. But then, if teams figure out they can be aggressive against them like they did, Seattle did yesterday, it'd be a little bit of a problem. But Melton straight shoving against Tampa was one of the best starts I've seen all year. I mean, he came out after the adjustments and just dominated, and just was not, and he wasn't striking out a lot of guys, but he was just keeping guys off balance, just short, quick innings. And it's not fair. It's not fair. But I think that what they're going to do is going to roll with the veterans, because Mize is a free agent, of course. Verlander's chasing the record. But I think it's going to have to be, I think they're going to put Melton in the bullpen, because Melton, I think, can be a 3-inning guy that will be a little more explosive than Montero. I think Montero out of the bullpen could be a disaster, whereas Melton, I hate to say this, might be better suited for now, and then you put him back in the rotation next year. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but I think Melton has better stuff that can play up in the bullpen better than Montero, because I think he has more swing and miss capabilities, which Tigers do not have right now in the back of the bullpen right now currently. Even when Jansen gets back, who knows what version of him you're going to get. This guy who's shown the ability to put a cutter right here at ball level, and you're just smiling, and you see the guy just going, really? You're going to give me that? Cool. Boom. And we saw that in Atlanta. We saw that in Chicago. Melton, I think, has the ability to swing and miss, and that's what you need in your bullpen.
So the other day I sent in one of our other group chats, I sent Dan, a couple guys, a text, and I said, I think it was Thursday, and there were 50 games until the All-Star break, 50 games until the trade deadline. And I said, Tigers, can they go 30-20, right? Put some, 3 or 4 games still under 500. Does that keep them in it, or does that keep them close? They both said yes. What do you think the number is for Scott Harris in terms of buyer or seller? Like what, do you think there's only 1 or 2 teams ahead of them? Is it within 4 games of the wild card? Like, what is it? Because it's the hard part for me is, yes, and Dan always said this last year, just get in and anything can happen, especially with Valdez and Skubal in a short series, and I get that. But, man, is it you're 3 games under 500 and a few games out? I mean, does that make them buyers? Like, what do you think Scott Harris is thinking?
It's hard to say because Scott Harris is he's a very elusive person in terms of just what he's thinking all the time. And I'm sure he's looking at the numbers. He's looking at the where they are in the place of the standings. And right now, the biggest thing for him, I think the number one thing, if he's going to be a buyer at the trade deadline, is to get this trade deadline right. And I mean, just nail it out of the park, because last year, they didn't. I mean, they addressed it, but did they really address the things? No. Yeah. I mean, Charlie Morton, no. They didn't really get another, like, I guess, I get why free agent wise they didn't get a lot of hitting help, because there wasn't a lot there. But be creative. I mean, if there's one thing that Harris hasn't been in terms of his trade deadline, if he's close, to me, most important thing, get creative and get a hitter that can help out when they're when the bats are kind of lulled to sleep a little bit, and then get an impact arm. The problem is that who are you going to give up? And so if you're going to give up, like, say, Casey Mize, because he's a free agent, and then you put Melton back in the rotation, okay, fine. But I think the most important thing you should worry about is who he's going to put in that clubhouse that's going to make them over the top, because that was the difference last year. They didn't have the 15-inning heartbreak because they didn't have a bat. I don't care what they have to do. Get a bat. That to me is the most important thing. Get that if they're going to be, I think if you're talking about that sweet spot, coach, I think if they're in that 30 to 20 range, if they're just right under 500, and they know that, I mean, depending on how their August shapes up too, I know they have a couple games on the road that are pretty tough. I think within 2 or 3 games, the striking distance. But whatever you got to do, sell your soul to the devil, whatever you got to do, just get a bat. That to me is the most important thing. More than anything else, get that right. The trade deadline, this is a definitive moment for Harris right here. And I know that sounds like a dramatic statement, but think about it, guys. You're in the American League right now. You have the Yankees, you have Tampa, you have the out west, and the rest of the American League is kind of wide open right now. And so get aggressive, be creative, and do something kind of bold. And Harris hasn't exactly done that yet, but just you gotta, this is a trade deadline they have to get right.
And Roger, just hearing that response, I think you're probably in the same mindset as both Brian and I, that this has to be either all in or all out. Like, and that's a really tough decision for Harris, because he has to decide, is this team good enough to make a run and get into the playoffs? Because if they are in that, like Brian said, 30 and 20, and they're a couple games under 500 and still a few games out of a playoff spot, that really puts Harris in a tough spot, because the worst thing they could do is go all in and then not make the playoffs and get nothing for all these guys that are on 1-year deals, and you don't even make the playoffs. So this is one of the most fascinating trade deadlines I can remember for really any Detroit sports team, because of the potential of, you could go all in and you could be the number one team betting wise if you go all in and get a hitter with Skubal and Valdez and the pitching staff you got potentially in the playoffs. They could be the top team to win the whole thing in the American League and get the World Series. But on the other end, if they don't make the playoffs and they don't trade anybody, you're really ruining your future and what you could have gotten in terms of the prospects and the trade chips you got. Like, what is your thought process in terms of what you think Scott Harris should do, and how far back do you think? Brian kind of mentioned it, but that number, like, do you think it's a little bit more than maybe it usually would be in terms of how down the American League is?
Yeah, I think it has to be a little bit more, because you look at Toronto, for example. Toronto and Baltimore are 3 games under 500, and as of heading in today, and they're teams that on paper, Baltimore and Toronto should be a lot better than what they are. So you have to kind of look and go, okay, what is Baltimore and Toronto doing? I'm not really worried about the West outside of Seattle. Texas, A's, the Yankees, I think, are a team that Yankees and Tampa are the 2 teams, but I'm really looking at the American League East, and I'm looking at the division right now. And so I think the Tigers have to be at least within striking distance of first place, at least 4 games back of first place at the All-Star break, or excuse me, in going into the trade deadline. At the All-Star, even at the All-Star break, think about it this way. You right now, Tigers as of heading into the play are about nine and a half back right now. That's not bad. It's not great either. So I look at it this way: if the Tigers can be in second place with the White Sox and they're right within striking distance of Guardians, I'm thinking 2 or 3 games back at the All-Star break. Or again, I don't know. I keep thinking the All-Star break, but the trade deadline. I think if they can roll out after the All-Star break, continue to be hot and not slow down. Remember last year at the All-Star break, they started horrible. They were horrible. So if they can reverse that, then you can feel better knowing that, okay, Harris has more confidence in what he's going to be able to do. The problem is that a lot of teams don't like how Harris deals and how he wants all these certain prospects from what is alleged out there. And so what's going to happen with Skubal? Now, is Skubal going to force the thing to happen, or is he what maybe they trade Valdez and keep Skubal? I don't know. This is the hardest thing about this, Dan, going into the next month or so, is the health of Harris Skubal. That is the most important. That's another thing to think about. If his value is dropped because his health is not as good, no matter what's going to happen, the Tigers have to swallow salary. They're not going to get those top 10 prospects. That's something else to consider.
If they end up being sellers, this doesn't go the way we think it's going to go. It kind of feels like they're in one of those long, hot stretches, but let's just say it doesn't go well and they end up being sellers. What do you think that would look like? I mentioned they kind of need to be all in or all out. Do you think that would be kind of a full out fire sale? And do you think it would be mostly just the 1 year guys? Or you mentioned like a Valdez. Could he be somebody they kind of put out there and see what they could get for him?
Maybe to put the feelers out for Valdez, but you kind of need him part of the next year's rotation, because after that, if you lose Mize and Skubal to free agency, then you're looking at a rotation that's just kind of slim, and the Tigers don't have anybody right now that's going to come up from the farm system that's going to start. I really don't. I mean, there's been such a drop off in injuries. There's 60 plus guys on the IL in the minor leagues, and I wish I was joking about that pitching wise, but between pitchers and position players. So I think that if they are going to be sellers, they're going to have to be strategic about who they sell. So for example, you don't think Mize has that in the back of his mind about them in the arbitration, the $25,000?
Yeah, nickel and dimed him.
Yeah, nickel and dime him. So like he, at the back of the mind, like going, hey, why am I going to come back here? And if some team is interested in Mize and they think, for example, a team in the NL thinks that, like maybe the Chicago Cubs, for example, think that he's the guy that can put him over, or the Brewers. The Brewers are a team that was interested in Skubal too, or allegedly, if you will. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 guys that like they will probably, like, maybe, for example, at that point, maybe in August, they're like, you know what, we'll just bring up Max Clark, screw it, and just kind of wave necessarily a white flag necessarily, but I think that it's going to be 2 or 3 guys at the most, not necessarily a fire sale, but enough where it depends on the return too. If they get guys that can help them right away, young guys, then 3 or 4 guys. I think 3 or 4 guys tops.
See, I remember the year before the 06 season, or a couple years before that, when the Tigers traded for Placido Polanco and gave up Uge Urbina, right? And I remember at the time talking to some buddies like, God, I'm just sick of trading for prospects, right? And it was nice that they got a ready-made major league guy who ended up being my favorite player during that era. Like, do you think fans would be okay if it's like an extreme fire sale and you're getting a bunch of, even though they might be high-end guys, but like single A dudes that are like still years away? Like, how do you think the fan base is going to respond? And do you think Chris Ilitch would be cool with that? Like, what do you think is going to be, how do you think that would go over? Like, I guess I'm just of the opinion, I think it's got to be close to ready-made guys. Like, I want to say the offseason when the Mets were the team that was really talking about Skubal, there was some ready-made guys there, and it was like, all right, that at least made sense because they would still be competitive. I don't know how fans will respond to a full-blown rebuild again.
I think it has to be ready-made guys, Coach, because I really think that if there's going to be guys, if there's guys that are 2-3 years away with all this quote-unquote promise, fans are going to be pissed. No doubt about it in my mind, because then it's just like, oh, here we go again. We're just doing the Avila era. Now, if it's a guy that can help them, like, let's say James Tibbs in the Dodgers right now as a prospect, as an example. If he's a guy because he just can't make the roster because the Dodgers have all these guys and he's hitting, he's raking down in Oklahoma City. He's a guy that can come in and give you a very, very good outfield. Great. that's a guy that's going, okay, you know what? I see where his role is. He'll be here no time at all. He'll be here as part of the Tigers outfield, no issue, as an example. But the problem is right now, I don't like as a guy that observes the farm system, I don't trust the way they're doing the pitching development right now. Because if they get a couple of guys to help them out pitching wise, I pause for concern. Now, if it's a guy who's in AAA, okay, fine. You don't just want a body. You want somebody who's going to be impactful. You want somebody who's going to at least give you 2 WAR, if not more. You want a surprise. The Tigers haven't swindled somebody in a long time. I mean, if you think about it in that era, I think about the Carlos Guillen trade. I think that's one of the best swindle jobs of all time by David Dombrowski. Even Avila with Willie Castro, it can be debated a little bit, but at least Castro turned out to be a positive player. And the guy they got rid of, unfortunately, never really. I mean, I think he got sick. The Cuban outfielder, I can't think of his name right now, that went to Cleveland. So at least with Castro, they got something out of value. But the Harris hasn't done that yet. I mean, is Matt Verlaine really the guy that you look at you and go, yeah, we got no. I mean, McGonigal, you can hang your head on. McKinstry, you can hang on your head a little bit. Tyler Holton, a little bit. But trade wise, no.
Leonis Martin. I remember that.
Yeah,
you're right. He was sick and all that. Which was awful for him. But I remember. Yeah, I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Good call.
You mentioned, Raj, if they are buyers and they get to the point where they are buyers, you think they absolutely need to get a hitter, right-handed hitter, I would assume. What position? Are you thinking third base? Are you thinking outfield? What are you thinking in terms of position players that the Tigers need to acquire if they're going to make a run?
I think a third baseman, because if we're going to continue to put Cole Keith in a platoon position, might as well to get a third baseman that can play on a regular basis. I think an outfielder would be ideal. Maybe somebody in right field to give Kerry Carpenter some reps. So you worry about his health overall, just to give Carpenter a little bit of relief. So I personally think it should be an outfielder or either a right fielder or a third baseman that can that can come in and just give you some quality at bats. I know that I get a name like Nolan Arenado, who's in Arizona right now. He's also actually hitting better than somebody posted something on Twitter earlier. So having better numbers than Alex Bregman, but the problem is the third baseman. He's not nearly the same guy with the same range he used to be before. As an example, I'm not saying he would be the target, but just throwing a name out there.
So you mentioned Colt Keith, and Dan and I go back and forth with this. Like, obviously AJ Hinch and the pinch hitting, right? The righty lefty matchups, and he loves it and stuff like that. And Dan always says, how is Colt Keith and those guys going to develop against left-handed pitchers if they're not given those opportunities? And to my point, I kind of think, like, unfortunately, I think AJ Hinch and the organization thinks they are who they are. Like, at this point, they're guys that they just don't rely and they don't trust hitting against lefties, right? And they don't trust with those matchups. Where do you fall on that? AJ Hinch, like, we kind of think he hasn't had the best year managing wise. Are we overthinking it a little bit? Are we too harsh because of all the injuries? Kind of what are your thoughts there?
The thing is, I'm the super Colt Keith fan. I mean, as much as I have to separate myself from being a fan to be an objective writer, observer of baseball, because I think that the power I saw in Colt Keith and the way he was hitting the ball in the minor leagues, that's still there. It's just, I think it's maybe in between the brain, in between the head with, in between the here and the brain with him a little bit, as far as him goes. But I think you're onto something, Coach. I think that he is what he thinks he is. I think Keith is a decent defender at third, but maybe they're just trying to also exactly figure out what they can do with they love the platoon. And sometimes it's almost like how Sparky Anderson used to do a lot of platoon with Bergman.
Yeah.
And then the entire, like, the entourage of third baseman they had throughout the decade. So I think that I think it's unfair sometimes for Keith, case in point, being pitched hit, but you're right. I wish Tigers would trust him a little bit more, because he hasn't done anything to burn the trust either. It's frustrating. And as far as, like, a guy like Jahmai Jones, for example, coming up in a situation, when are you going to give a guy like Ben Malgeri an opportunity who's hitting lefties down in AAA right now?
Yeah.
When are you going to do that? Because now, like you mentioned earlier, we're at 60, 70 games here. Jones, come on. I mean, he at least came up a couple times last year and did something, but he hasn't done that. He hasn't had a signature moment yet.
And I would add Kerry Carpenter into that as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
And I think today being a prime example, he hit one of the best home runs we've seen in the playoffs last year in Seattle against Spire, the same pitcher. In this situation, you got a runner on third, you're down by one, no
Nobody out.
outs, and they pinch hit Carpenter for Vierling. At some point, I just feel as a coach and it's just as a competitor, like, ride with your studs, man. It's like a now or never time. Ride with your studs. And you've seen this guy in clutch moments get clutch hits, get clutch home runs. And you saw it just a year ago in October against that same pitcher. It's just things like that make me question Hinch a little sometimes, especially this year. Like, to me, that's just the time where you got to ride your guy. You got to ride the stud and let him hit.
No, you're right. And Dan, I mean, I'm with you on that. And I don't have an explanation other than this is the thing about him. The thing about what I find funny about the fan base is that a lot of people are getting on Harris, but Hinch is the one that makes the in-the-game decisions. And so Hinch doesn't get as much grief per se than like everybody's like fire Harris, blah, blah, blah. We're hearing more of the fire Hinch chants, but those are more like moody teenagers, like, oh, just say it every once in a great while. But it's sometimes I just don't. You guys remember when Brad Ausmus would say, "This is my closer," and he was very stuck on these roles, kind of thing.
Yep.
I never thought in a million years I'd see that with Hinch and the flexibility. But maybe he looks at what he sees in AAA because Hinch is a smart guy. He probably looks down and goes, well, "These guys ain't gonna help me. What am I doing here?" So I'm gonna do what I have to do, unless somebody pops out to him. And so I think he has a pulse on what's going on. I think Hinch has a lot more control than what people think, and just seeing how he commands everything. But at the same time, when is he going to make that decision? But Carpenter, you're right. Like even yesterday, he had a couple foul balls that were like within inches of being home runs. How the hell do you not ride that? That's that right there. I wish I had a better explanation for, but
there is some truth to, I think, like keeping your whole roster involved and keeping those guys, I don't want to say engaged because they're pros, right? But like getting playing time, getting at bats, you know what I'm saying? There is some truth to that. However, it's also a results-driven business. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, those guys, it's not like Andy Ibanez a couple of years ago when he was on fire, like that was awesome, right? Like especially in the playoffs, like ride that thing out. But it's just not there. And like, what is Jahmai Jones, like 4 for 41 or whatever it is? And just like that's the thing is that's the frustrating part because like Dan said, you can keep Kerry Carpenter or Colt Keith in, and those guys would be probably 4 for 41 or maybe a little bit better. You know what I mean? So I think that's the frustrating part for fans. And to your point, I'm surprised too. He's a little more stubborn than I thought, right? Because at some point, like, I know you are who you are as a coach and as a manager, but man, you also got to do what you got to do to win games. And sometimes
just add to that a little too, Brian, like 2024, he did all that. He did the platoon in the mix and matching in the pinch hit, and it seemed like every button he pushed worked on that magical run to the playoffs. And I wonder if it's kind of stuck with him, and now it's wearing off, and it's just not working this season. And I wonder at what point does he need to adjust and adjust that thinking, and if he will adjust that thinking, because you can't keep pinch hitting Jahmai Jones and him keep failing time after time after time. At some point, you got to adjust or get him out and switch him out with somebody else.
Well, it's like I remember the Jim Leyland, Alexis Gomez magic, right? You guys remember that in the playoffs, right? Going way back, but then like years later, like Cleet Thomas is hitting cleanup or whatever it was, and you're like, what the heck's going on, right? So I mean, I don't know. Like it's a long season, and that's our job to nitpick all these little things. But again, it's a results-driven business, and that's what we're here for.
But Barrage, I mentioned, maybe switching out Jahmai Jones or somebody else in the minor leagues. This is what you do. This is what you do for a living. You cover the minor league system with the Tigers minor league report. Is there any guys down there right now in Toledo or in Erie who we could potentially see in the near future or towards the end of the season? Max Clark probably being the top of that. The one that everybody kind of knows. How is he doing? Number one, and do you see him kind of coming up at any time this season? As well as is there anybody else that can come up, especially as a right-handed hitter to potentially replace Jahmai Jones?
I think Clark. What I love about Clark is that he's a guy who it's like clockwork. The guy, talking to him a few times, he knows the game really well. And I think that he's choosing the right time to start lifting the ball a bit more. He's been swinging. He's been much more aggressive in the strike zone down in Toledo. And I think defensively, he's also making better routes in the outfield. And I think Clark, depending on what happens here in the next month or so, I think we could see Clark as a late season call up. I think he brings a lot. He has a good eye at the plate. He has the ability to be a aggressive hitter. He's been hitting better as of late in the last month or so. So that's some good signs. You want to see the hitting velocity a little bit. It's been a struggle, but he's getting better. It's a work in progress. I don't think he's going to be somebody you're going to see like in the next month or so, maybe after the All-Star break. It all depends on really where the Tigers are contention-wise. So if the Tigers are contending, maybe he doesn't get that call up. As far as like the rest of the roster goes, I know Hyu Lee didn't have exactly left a great taste in people's mouths, but I thought I saw enough there where if he can fix his swing, I love his fireness, his competitiveness. He is a real, like, he's kind of like a Josh Naylor type. He is a guy who will get you want him on your team. He is that kind of guy that can carry that team. I think he's a good position player. Max Anderson, I get a lot of questions about Max Anderson. The thing that I worry about him is if he doesn't walk a lot. So that doesn't translate well on the big league side of things, because then, I mean, you can hit everything great, but if you're going to do that in the big league club, you got to hit that with power. And that's something he doesn't do as of yet. He's a line drive hitter. I think he has a good eye at the plate. I think you could probably see him in some role where the Tigers are going to see what they have with him. I'm still team Ben Malgeri, because Malgeri has hit, like, he hits sliders and breaking balls. Great. He hits velocity 95 plus. Fine. In his splits against lefties, it's over 300 against lefties. All the things that, and he plays an average outfield. That's something you have to see what they have with him. As far as Double A goes, I mean, Jose Briseño, who still hasn't played this year yet, that's a guy who I hope we get to see him. Trey Cruz, I'm sorry, and before I forget, Trey Cruz, because he was injured, I think he would have been up here if he wasn't injured. Valencia is a guy who I think might get a shot too as well. He's a right-handed hitter. Defensively, he's kind of a liability because catching-wise, he's okay. First base, So, but he's on a 40-man roster, and Valencia has got a lot of power. He's been hitting better as of late, but against breaking balls, the averages don't look good. But we could see him potentially up here. But as far as Double A goes, Briseño, Lorenzo is on the 40-man roster. We'll see what happens there. He's been hitting better in Double A as of late. You could see him in Toledo by probably the end of the year, but right now, those are some of the names. But it's just in terms of pitching wise, Buckus. I got nothing on pitching wise right now.
And as far as, some of the younger prospects that we'll be seeing, down the road, maybe 2-3 years down the road, who are some guys that have really popped up, whether it be down in Florida or up here in West Michigan, some guys that maybe jumped on the scene that fans may not know?
So we were just doing our top 45 update, which will be out either tomorrow or Tuesday. And some names you should get to know that are coming up in the future I like a lot are Brett Callahan, who's in center field in Erie, really hitting for power. He had a home run. He had a single. He's a guy who can play center field decently. I think he's a name that you should look after. I think Michael Oliveto, catcher who's been out with a foot injury, his swing is really good. Like when I saw him at the Futures game down in Florida, I understand why the Tigers liked him so much. He's a guy who it seemed like for a kid his age had it all together. Ben Jacobs is off to a pitcher, left-handed pitcher out of Arizona, off to a really good start, tearing up through high A right now. So you always have to wonder the transition. Andrew Sears, who I'm a big fan of, another left-handed pitcher, name to keep out. And then the Johan Cobra, who's been doing really well since coming over from the international side of things. And then the guy that pitched today, who has a Jared Weaver type of vibe to him, is Charlie Christensen, a 15-round draft pick who's been pitching, but he's just been tearing up through Lakeland right now. It's a name that I really like. Position player-wise, I would also, Jordan Neos is off to a really good start too down in Lakeland, and Kelvis Salcedo, a right-handed pitcher who has a tremendous upside. So those are some names. Bryce Rayner, of course. Bryce Rayner hit a 110-mile-an-hour ground out today, and Rayner, after his shoulder surgery, he didn't bat for 8 months, and everybody's making a big deal about his swing. his swing's fine. The guy's gonna be fine. And Bryce Rainer is having his numbers on. He's still striking out quite a bit in West Michigan, but he's a guy. If he can hit his potential, I think Rainer is gonna be a shortstop of the future.
Dude's 19 years old.
Yeah, I saw Emily Walden had tweeted about his swing and how it's kind of changed a little bit, over the last year or so. What do you attest to that in terms of guys? Because there was some talk about, Cole Keith has changed his swing a little bit, that maybe it's affected his power. But what do you attest to that? And what do you think, coaches are saying to him? Is it the coaches talking to him? Is it the hitter themselves trying to make adjustments? Like when you see guys, make some massive adjustments to their swing, where do you think of that is all coming from?
I'll give an example of Gage Workman, who used to be a switch hitter down in AA, and he was his father was his hitting coach, and so one of the things he started working on was setting his right foot down and toe tapping a little bit, and he was and basically told him stop hitting from the right hand side. You're better on the left side. So they look at metrics and they look at things and go, here's how they give him suggestions on what they can do, whether to calm the hands a little bit. Like Brett Callahan, for example, every time he swung, his helmet would fly off. Now it's like his hands are a lot calmer. So what I think happens is that the coaches look at things and go, okay, here's what you need to clean up. Here's some instructions. And then they look for the results. And I think that's what you guys keep saying. It's a results-driven business. And so once the players kind of believe in that a little bit, then the coaching will take over and go. Because, for example, it took Workman a long time before he believed in what they were telling him to do. And he started hitting for more power. And that's how he got picked up last year in the Rule 5 draft. And I think about like how Clark himself is more like, he's working on his own things. And some of these guys do that. Like they'll get a swing coach like Kerry Carpenter did, the guy who is this insufferable guy on Twitter who helped Aaron Judge. Same thing. It was like they sought these things out. The Tigers are being more involved with that than they ever were. Prior to that, Jake Rogers fixed a swing, outside instruction because somebody told them about it. In this case, the Tigers are really doing their due diligence on saying, this is something you need to clean up, and here's how.
Well, Roger, we really appreciate having you on. Final thing I got for you. To me, this is one of the most fascinating teams to cover and watch over the last 2.5 years. And I'm wondering, this is kind of a question for both you guys. Do you remember a team in Detroit sports that has been like this, where they have these long extended stretches where they're one of the best teams in the league, and then almost like on a dime, completely flip and can be one of the worst teams in baseball right now? Hopefully we're on one of those long extended hot streaks, but have you guys seen a team like this that can go and just flip from being the worst to the last place team, just on a dime like this?
No.
It's crazy,
you know what? Coach, I the only team I can think of that in terms of Tiger wise that I can think of that was maybe come close, that was a team that was infuriating to watch, was I was trying to think one of the last teams that Brad Osmond's coached, the postseason team, the team that lost to Baltimore.
2014 team.
Yeah. That team was infuriating because on paper they were better than Baltimore, and
they had the 3 Cy Young Award winners.
Yeah, that team
Cy Young Award winners.
Yeah, and that team did not look like they even gave, they cared when. I'm not saying they didn't care, but you know what I mean. Like it was just one of those things where like, really, Baltimore?
Yeah.
Come on.
Baseball's weird like that. I think for me, maybe like the 06 team where they were 60-20 at one point. But you remember, like Pudge was still great, but he was on the downside of his career, you would say, right? I mean, he wasn't hitting his 40, you know what I'm saying? And they didn't. I don't think that they. I mean, they obviously had Arizona.
Yeah, they got in as well.
They lost, but they were 60-20 at one point. And I remember it was like, holy heck! And like I remember at least thinking like, hey, I mean, they're not all of a sudden going to be bad, but then they did lose the division lead, and they got hot again. But I don't know. I mean, there's always streaky players in sports, but you're right, Dan. I've never seen a team.
The one team I can remember is the Wayne Fonts 90s Lions. They'd go 11-5 one year, and then the next year they'd be 5-11. Now you could attest that to having a first place schedule, last place schedule.
Well, and that's a great point too, because I remember the 95 season. Remember they were 3-6 at one point, and then everybody's like, Wayne Fontes is done, and then they win 7 in a row and get hammered by the Eagles in the playoffs. Like that team, but that offense, like, say what you want about Scott Mitchell, but he had a great year, and then Herman Moore, Johnny Moore, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I think they had 3,000-yard receivers.
Yeah, was that the year that Lomas Brown said they're guaranteed to win in Philadelphia?
Guaranteed to win in Philadelphia.
Rodney Pete was like, no, it's not gonna happen on my watch.
And then Lomas Brown went up to, oh God, who was the coach? Why can't I think of the Eagles coach? And he's like, don't forget about me in free agency. Lomas did that. Oh gosh, darn it! I'm gonna look it up.
It wasn't Buddy Ryan. No. Buddy Ryan was gone at that point, right?
It was just
it might have been Ray Rhodes. I remember.
That's right.
Ray went up to Ray Rhodes and said, don't forget about me after. Yeah, just wild.
Yeah.
But
no, that's a good call, because I remember when they had the adjustment to the run and shoot that they had when they became more of a passing team.
Yeah,
and everybody was like just was mad. Like, just give the ball to Barry. Give the ball to Barry. That's a really good call back there, because Wayne Fontes, man, like, say what you will about Wayne Fontes, man, but he drove me absolutely crazy. Like, just I don't know what was him. Bobby, I mean, we could always talk about Bobby Ross and the whole bringing a fullback, and that's another conversation for another day. But man, like, make up your mind about the quarterback you want to use, man.
I know, right? I know, just wild.
Oh man. Well, we're hoping for another one of those long hot streaks from the Tigers, and they get back into this thing. And we talk to you again maybe in a month, 6 weeks from now. We're talking about who are they going to buy. But if it goes the other way, we'll have you on to talk about what prospects they're going to go for.
And then apparently we're going to talk about Rogers' ranking of his favorite Lions coaches in the mid to late 90s, and we'll talk.
You know what, man? Look, I mean, like I said, it's been a while since I talked 90s Lions, but I've been playing them in Tecmo Super Bowl because I have the simulator on my computer.
Let's go.
I'll tell you right now, man, I will, because you can play old Tecmos to, like, they have custom ones you can play to like 97, 98. Man, those are like the lean years, I like to call them, man. Like, like every once in a while, like, I'll put Dante Culpepper as my quarterback, and like, what am I doing? In his short hands.
Well, Roger, this has been a blast. Thank you again so much for coming back on. Where can people find your work? Where can people find you on social media?
So on social media, you can find me on X at Rogcast Baseball, and then you can find me on Tigers ML Report. And also, it's kind of the first, I'm going to drop some breaking news here. I'm going to be helping out with Woodward Sports again, doing some things with them, Woodward Baseball with Nick and Gordon. So, I'm going to be helping those guys out again. The details are still coming, but Nick and I ever since Nick came into the business, I've been looking out for him. He's a really good dude, and we've been vibing. And now that new management, we're bringing those guys back in the fold. So, find me on Woodward Sports as well.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on that news. That's great to hear. When I saw that the management had changed, I was wondering if some people were going to start moving back over there. I immediately saw a few guys, Jeff Iafredi, a few other people jump over there. So that's good, man. That's good, because I thought Woodward Sports had a chance to really be pretty great if they had some good management. And it sounds like the change is going to be good and good overall. So congratulations. That's awesome, Roger. And look forward to seeing you with Woodward Sports and everything you've been doing with Tigers Minor League Report. We love your work and love what you've been doing. So again, appreciate you being on, man. And have a great night, man.
You're the best.
Thanks a lot to the Catholic League out.
Let's go, man. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, Brian. Good stuff, man.
So good.
It is fun to talk positive news about the Detroit Tigers. We had them on last weekend. This would not have been the same conversation.
No. And at about 3:30, I thought I had some notes down about how negative this conversation was going to be. Like,
you were ready to go on a Jemai Jones rant.
That was going to happen.
I was ready to go on an AJ Hinch rant. If Matt Vierling had hit into a double play, I would have gone in. AJ Hinch rant. I'm like, it's what happened if you pinch hit.
Yeah,
he's gonna come back around. That spot's gonna come back around.
Yeah, that whole thing is like, dude, okay, in that situation, infield's in, like, okay, just tell your most clutch hitter to hit a fly ball. Like, that's what he's thinking in that situation. You know what I'm saying? He's not thinking base hit. Just hit a fly ball. So
it would think if you're depending on statistics and matchups.
Yeah.
And you looked at Spire and he had 10 at bats versus Carpenter. Carpenter was like 0 for 10 with like 7 Ks. Like, okay, I understand.
Sure,
Dude, the last time we saw them face each other was in the playoffs at Game 5, and Carpenter took him deep. I'm like, it's like, what are we doing here, man?
Yeah, I mean, this like it's such a long season. You can try some different things, but like again, I don't think they're in. If that's his mindset, you're not in position anymore to have those like feel it out, man. Like come on. Running out of time.
It's go time. You got to go with your studs, man.
Yep.
Got to go with your studs. And somebody did comment. I meant to ask Roger. We got into it quite a bit though. But he just asked, "What do you think will happen with Jahmai Jones?" And man, I don't know how many more chances the guy can get. Man, he's got one role, and that's to hit lefties, and he's not doing it. At some point, Roger brought up Algieri. Maybe they give him a shot. So I don't know about Jones. I don't know if he has options or anything. I don't think he. That's what I wanted to ask Roger about. But if they don't, then they got to DFA him. I would assume somebody's going to pick him up.
Let's assume best case scenario where they're in a position to buy. Like maybe the bat isn't like the superstar bat. Maybe it's the guy who you're looking for in those pinch hitting situations.
Yeah, actually, Jeff Kramer commented and said a Sean Casey kind of guy. When they got Sean Casey in 2006.
Yeah. Maybe it's
a professional veteran hitter.
Maybe just a high contact guy. His OPS isn't through the roof, but I mean, high contact guy who puts the ball in play, something like that in those situations. Maybe that's something they can acquire without selling, the farm, the guys that they're obviously still high on.
Well, that's the thing too, Brian, with the American League. We're talking about the Tigers being still in it for 12 games under because it's everybody's down. Everybody's down, which also means everybody's got a shot or feels like they got a shot, which means there's going to be a heck of a lot less sellers and a heck of a lot more buyers. And that's going to make it really tough to acquire guys.
I should have asked Roger this. If the Tigers are 100% healthy, what's their record right now?
I would say it's probably flipped. Now, the tough thing is that, a lot of those games were blown by the bullpen. But they also didn't get add-on runs a lot of those times later in games. It was like 3-2 games, 2-1 games that they would end up blowing. Like if they were healthy, they had Torres and Carpenter that whole time. Maybe they get a couple more add-on runs in those games that they blew. But the bullpen is definitely the biggest question going forward. And how do they adjust to that? When Kenley Jansen comes back, do you put him back in the closer role? I don't know. I don't think you can. Does Troy Milton eventually get that spot? Vest has been pitching a little bit better lately.
I was thinking,
it's fascinating.
Well, I was going to ask Roger. As popped into my head, Kiter Montero. Was he ultimately a closer guy, like potentially? But Troy Milton has a little bit more of the swing and miss, I think, for that role. But yeah, it'll be
like just Will Vest. If Will Vest continues to pitch well, he's always a hot and cold type pitcher, man, and he feels like he's starting to get hot again.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
I don't know either.
It is just nice to be watching good baseball, fun moments. The 21-year-old rookie gets the walk-off hit a home run earlier in the game. You see the little girl with the Magana goggles, and Danielle Bruce when interviewed her, and she, she's a little girl. She like handled the whole thing really good, and the whole thing was cool. The whole game, everything about it today was just awesome. Really good crowd for a team that's 13 games under.
But still, yeah.
Well, those tickets were probably bought for the season, but
probably
still, man, they came out and the weather was beautiful. It's just fun, man. It's fun when you have games that are meaningful and interesting, and it was good. It's just good.
So let me ask you this then, Dan. To Roger's point about this is a big week. Like the Tigers now play the Twins and the Guardians. What do they have to go?
I think they need to sweep the Twins. and you can't get swept by Cleveland. You preferably take 2 out of 3. But if you sweep the Twins, that gives you a little bit of leeway going into that series. But you could have Skubal pitching in that Cleveland series.
You could,
which would be preferable.
So in the next 6 games, feeling pretty good 4-2, regardless of it's taking both.
Yeah, I would say
that's the expectation.
I'm hoping for a sweep in the Twins, then you rock into Cleveland, and it's go time, man. That is the series. That's the series of the season so far.
If we weren't so busy, man, we could take an impromptu trip to Cleveland and go watch them, and then do an episode and do a show there.
That would be cool.
That would be fun. That'd be pretty sick. We're both married though. We got to check with the missus, but
I got family stuff this week, unfortunately. But that might be something I think the Tigers are in Cleveland in August. I think that was the one I was looking at.
If things are good at that point, that would be a fun road.
That's
trip.
A divisional battle. That's the goal, is to get to that point. Hopefully the Tigers have bought a bat at that point.
Yeah.
Before the deadline, and they go into that series, and it's a battle for the division. But
yes.
We may be putting the cart a little bit before the horse with just one good week of baseball, but that's what happens. Yep. That's what happens with baseball, man. And then, like I said, we've seen these stretches where when they get hot, they get red hot, and when they're cold, they are ice cold. And the only thing, like I said, I could compare it to is that Lions, but that was just like season to season. That wasn't so much in season where you would see this craziness. And
I'm still going back to, man, like if they get anything from the bottom third of their lineup.
They did today.
Yes, they did. And they did the other day. Was it the 7-8-9 got a hit, and he kept Zach Short in and got a hit, though Perez. So I mean, if they get any type of contributions where it's not, almost negative WAR, they can still be okay. So
well, a lot of good stuff with the Tigers. A lot of good stuff going on there this week. I said a 5-1 stretch. Hoping it continue to play good baseball. The other team, it plays in downtown Detroit, the Detroit Red Wings. Dire straits right now, Brian. I would say this is as bad as it's been since maybe the Dead Wing era, before Steve Yzerman got drafted, because we're about to enter year 8 of the Yzer plan. And their captain, the guy that they're supposed to be kind of building this whole team around, has just demanded a trade, and that's Dylan Larkin, the captain. Yeah. What were your thoughts when you saw that come out, and what do you think the state of the Red Wings is right now when your captain has requested a trade when you just signed him to a long-term deal?
Yeah, I was shocked. I think I would have been less shocked if Yzerman would have traded one of those core pieces that you think of, Sider, Raymond, or Larkin, without any of this knowledge. Like if he decided to shake it up a little bit, I wouldn't have been surprised by that. I'm a little surprised that Larkin demanded a trade, but the more research I've done and listening to people that know the hockey and know the Red Wings situation, I mean, very similar to Mitch Marner when he was in Toronto, right? He's like, Larkin's now 30 into his 30s, and just doesn't look like the progress is there, and he's getting frustrated. And it's unfortunate because he's a hometown kid. Not that should matter, but the fans like him, like Captain America, you know what I'm saying? And things like that was really cool. And it's unfortunate to see that it's come to that, to be honest with you, because they've been really close. And I think there are other ways you could retool the roster without doing this. But I think you have to. Like, obviously, like I can't see how he goes back into that locker room and he doesn't get traded and, oh yeah, hey, everything's fine, fellas. You know what I'm saying? So now does this diminish what they can get for him? What type of package? Maybe. I don't know. It's not like he's threatening to hold out if he doesn't get traded. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, just unfortunate because I was a Dylan Larkin fan. Like, he's a Detroit kid. Like, I remember going to a high school award ceremony, and he was one of the guest speakers, and he talked about being a hometown kid. One of his favorite memories was Meglio Ordonez hitting that home run just because he's a big Detroit sports guy, right? And now he's saying, hey, I want out. So does it say I guess my question through this whole thing is, and I don't know if we'll ever know, does it say more about him or does it say more about Steve Yzerman? Like, that's my question.
I think it says more about Yzerman. And then when your captain, who you just mentioned, grew up here.
Yeah.
I mean, he wants more than anybody to turn this thing around. Yeah, to turn this thing around and get the Red Wings back in the playoffs. Yeah. And he's to the point where he's just fed up with it. And we saw, a year ago when he went public and kind of basically complained that they didn't get more guys at the deadline to try to help him out, to try to get this team into the playoffs. And that, you got to believe that's where kind of the friction really started.
Sure.
But you thought, maybe they sit down and talked and discussed things out. But I mean, this guy signed long term. I thought, man, they're going to ride or die with this guy, and the same thing on his part. He's going to ride or die with this team and try to get turn this thing around. And it's so quickly after that long term deal to be signed for him to be demanding a trade. You got to wonder if there was something that went down behind the scenes that we may never know about, but maybe there was something said between the two of them. I don't know. It just seems very weird
it is
to come out and demand a trade right now.
But do you think, I mean, I don't know because I'm not in the pro sports arena, but do you think Steve Yzerman sat down and had a conversation with Dylan Larkin? Do you think that's common for GMs to have those conversations with players, even if it is your elite guys? I could see it, you know what I mean? I wonder if that was a legit thing or it's not. I don't know.
After something like that, where it starts to get public, I would think there had to have been some type of conversation. They're just going to go walk their separate ways, or just? I mean, or
is it the agent, or is it an agent? Coach maybe,
agents.
Sure, coach maybe.
Know, man, I just feel like watching Steve Yzerman over all these years, I just feel like he's the type of guy that would bring him in the office today and have that conversation man to man and talk it out. At least I'd like to think that's how it would go. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe it didn't happen.
I mean, that's a business. Like we talked about, it's a business. Why would Steve? I mean, you know what I mean? He probably doesn't have the personal relationship with players. Management just doesn't have that type of relationship, right? And to a degree, coaches don't either, right? I mean, you think Scotty Bowman had a personal relationship with, Yzerman? No, he wanted to trade him.
Seeing a personal relationship, but that is an interesting thing too, right? Because I still believe that was a motivational factor.
Could have been
ploy that Bowman. I've never heard official things like that. It's just my thought process of, because he wanted Steve Yzerman to start play a certain way, start to be more of a leader, start to play more of a defensive style from the center position, and he put that stuff out there to light the fire under his ass. Be like, this is what you got to do if you're going to still continue to be the leader of this team.
Well, but you remember though, there was also the legit rumor was Yzerman for Alexei Yashin.
To Ottawa,
the Senators, and then opening night, Steve Yzerman gets introduced, and it was the loudest ovation, arguably in the history of Joe Louis Arena. Scotty Bowman's like, "Yeah, I can't do this."
It's funny, right? The next loudest probably ovation to ever happen, outside of winning the cup and all that.
Sure.
Loudest ovation for a player being introduced was when Yzerman came back to give a speech, because I think it was the end of Joe Louis Arena, or whatever the case may be. I forget exactly the situation. But Yzerman came back, and the whole crowd stood up and said, "Come back, Stevie, because everybody wanted him to come back as the general manager and save the franchise." About to go into year 8. Year 8.
It's not okay. So the thing is historically in baseball and hockey, I think those have been the sports that are the hardest to turn around your organization, because when you're bad, and typically it's going through the draft, and it's that slow process, right? But that's changed a little bit over the years with free agency and trades, and guys teams I think can get better a little bit quicker. We just talked about the White Sox, they were bad forever, and they're competitive now, right? So I mean, I think it happens a lot sooner than you think, and so there might have been a time where if Yzerman walked in and did his evaluation, it's hey, this is going to take 10 years, but with so many teams making the playoffs now in pro sport, you know what I'm saying? It's 8 years is unacceptable. I mean, I think legitimately year 4, year 5 is when screws should have been turning hey man, this is not acceptable. Now to your point, year 8, not good.
Yeah. And where do you go from now? I mean, it's
when
you're going into year 8 of a rebuild, and now your captain demands a trade. You already have so many pieces that still need to be filled.
You do.
And now if you trade him, now you got your first line center, the spot that you need to replace.
Well, so going back to similar to the Tigers, and I asked Roger, fans are going to lose their mind if Larkin gets traded for draft picks and prospect. Nobody wants to hear that, because then you're basically waving the right flag, hey, we're still not close to being a playoff team. Yeah. That's going to be bad. That's going to be bad. And then, I mean, Detroit sports fans are good anyway and great, but how's that going to affect going down to Little Caesars Arena now? Hey, and here's another rebuild. I mean, you have the shiny new arena that isn't new anymore. So it's are fans going to stop showing up? Are there, attendance down? I mean, I don't know. Is it all both teams are a Chris Ilitch thing? It's just a problem all around him, and we could go deep into that. But I
wasn't intending to go into that, but I saw somebody tweet that out and talk about that it's a Chris Ilitch issue. I'm like, what do you want him to do? I just mentioned how he brought Steve Yzerman back to be the general manager. Everybody wanted him. Every single fan that's ever rooted for the Red Wings was thrilled that Yzerman was coming back to be the GM.
No,
like that. Chris Ilitch did that. He got him here.
Yeah,
like, and it's not like it's a money issue. It's a salary cap. They're right up against the salary cap. Like, they're not cheap in terms of that. And then you look at the Tigers, the same thing. They got a top 10 payroll. Like, he spent money. They went out and got Valdez. They had all these guys come back. And Torres and Flaherty, and they went out and got Jansen. They brought Finnegan. Like, they spent money. They spent as much money as anybody in the American League this offseason. So to me, I'm off the Chris Ilitch hate bandwagon. Like, I'm off of that. Like, I think he's done what he could do. Like, these guys gotta, like, Steve Yzerman's gotta produce. Like, you gotta produce. To me, it's always gone back to Brian. It's always gone back to the goalie. It's always gone back to
of course.
This whole time he's been here. Of course, they have not had a top 15 goalie, and that makes or breaks the team.
Could the Chris Ilitch criticism be similar to what the Ford family was with, like, Matt Millen? You know what I'm saying? And holding on to GMs and coaches, but that's all kind of thing.
But Matt Millen didn't have a history of being a high quality GM and being the hero of that city. You know what I mean? Like, that's a totally, to me, a different deal, because Yzerman has a track record both with the Tampa Bay Lightning and building that team up to being a Stanley Cup contender, and also what he did with Team Canada and putting that team together and then winning their first gold medal in decades.
But the Tigers weren't afraid to get rid of Alan Trammell, and the Pistons weren't afraid to get rid of Joe Dumars.
I know.
So I wonder. So you know what I mean? Like,
I'm just saying, I think Chris Ilitch is getting too much hate right now in this moment, because I don't know what else can he do. What do you just want him to stand up and fire Steve Yzerman? Well, then who else are you going to get?
Correct. No, correct.
Either way, it's going to be a rebuild.
No problem.
Unfortunately,
I can say unequivocally that I don't want it to just be Larkin for draft picks or a prospect. It's got to be, something where Austin Matthews is in return or something like that, like a package or something.
It's really tough to do, especially when Yzerman's got one hand tied behind his back, because every GM knows that the player that they're trying to trade has demanded to trade.
Well, that's what I mentioned. Like, is his value diminished almost because of that? Yeah, for sure.
I think it has to be.
It has to be.
I think it has to be.
I agree.
So very unfortunate. Last thing I wanted to get into, Brian, before we jump off here, I saw an interesting tweet regarding Mike Brown, and it basically just talked about how Mike Brown has, when he came in, Thibodeau was fired with the New York Knicks after last season, had a pretty good season last year with the Knicks, but they fired him and brought in Mike Brown, and Mike Brown had talked about, like, hey, I need to adjust to my players. Like, I can't come in and install my system and expect everybody to adapt to my system. I have to make adjustments and adjust to the players that I have. And my question to you is two-part. The first one is, what are your thoughts in terms of franchises? Because I think the Pistons might get into this territory, and they've been in this territory in the past, of feeling like you get to a certain level and you get a coach who's been successful, but you feel like he can't get you over the hump, and you let him go out and get another coach. Like, what do you think about that as a franchise? Because to me, that always seems like super risky, but I wonder if the Pistons might get to that point in terms of their trajectory right now.
But by the way, good for Mike Brown to be in this position, by the way, because he got a raw deal at a few different stops, especially the one time in Cleveland with LeBron and whatnot. So good for him. But I think there's definitely a case for that. I mean, think about the Pistons with Rick Carlisle and Larry Brown, right? That's the most obvious. And then, that's the obvious one, right? And so I think sometimes you have your coaches or managers who are that stopgap guy, right? That transition piece to, like, that next elite coach. And so, I think it definitely happens. And I don't think anything's wrong with it. And I've brought this up before. I'm not saying it's the case, but could that be a similar situation if Dan Campbell in the next couple of years, and then, like, if they don't win the Super Bowl the next couple of years, and then you go get somebody with a strong defensive background or a strong offensive mind,
or Super Bowl champion coach,
or an established somebody, right? Maybe that's possible. I don't know. And I'm not saying that's happening. I'm not saying I'm clamoring for that. I'm not saying I'm not leading the fire Dan Campbell train, but I mean, that sort of thing happens in professional sports, and it's not uncommon.
And then the last thing I really want to get into, the second part of that question that came up from this tweet, adjusting to your players that you have, and as us as coaches, we have a certain system, certain offense that we like to run. But if you get into a certain situation, you go to, whether it's a school, whether it's, in the pros, you go to a certain team, and it's a different style of players that maybe not necessarily fit into the system that you've used for a long time. As a coach, how do you handle that? When you first step in, whether it's training camp or whatever it may be, you first starting out, are you looking to try to get your players to adjust to what you're trying to do in your traditional system, or are you adjusting your system to adapt to the players that you're about to coach?
Two incidents that came into mind, and they're on the opposite sides of the spectrum here. So think about Brian Billick when he was in Baltimore. When he got hired, he was the offensive coordinator of the Vikings, who were like lighting up scoreboards, right? Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Randall Cunningham was a quarterback, and then he goes to Baltimore and wins a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer as his quarterback, and he relies on his defense and runs the ball, right? So he does it the right way, where you got to adjust a little bit to your situation, and he wins. Conversely, you can use the argument about Rich Rodriguez at Michigan, right? In the quarterbacks he inherited, right? Granted, like we just got done saying, like, you are who you are and you know what you know. But his quarterbacks at the time, Stephen Three, for example, weren't the prototypical spread quarterbacks that he wanted. And he tried to make it fit, square peg, round hole into his scheme, and it wasn't working. And, he used the argument, and I agree with him, because I was a Rich Rod defender, like, this is who I am. We got to develop a bunch of positions. We got to develop all these players, and and we're gonna ride it out until we get the quarterback that we want. He was really hoping for Terrell Pryor, but the problem became for him is like, okay, then you can't lose to Toledo.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You can't lose those games then, because then your argument's null and void. And so, yeah, I think it's coaches. You're gonna have to do what you got to do to win games, and that's ultimately the end game, and that's the goal in this situation. So credit to Mike Brown, and especially in the NBA, right? We're a sport. There's only 5 guys on the floor at a time, and you're going to have to adjust and meet the players where they're at, so to speak.
And you've seen that adjustments that he has made with this Knicks team throughout the year. And they look like a vastly different team towards the end of the season, obviously in the playoffs, having an incredible run. I think they've won 13 straight playoff games. And they look like a completely different team than what we saw the Pistons play, where the Pistons just took them to the woodshed. I think the 3 times they played them. And the Knicks have completely kind of changed and adjusted. And you got to give a lot of credit to Mike Brown. And they're up 2-0, about to have the next 3 games at Madison Square Garden. I don't know if you saw the ticket prices, Brian.
Oh, I did.
Almost like $8,000 or something just to get in the building. Absolutely insane. That New York Knicks fan base, they've been craving for this type of team and this type of situation for many, many, many years. And it's finally coming. I got to say, man, I'm very surprised. I did not see this coming. And I thought whoever was going to win the West was going to kind of have a cakewalk in the finals. And it has not been the case.
No, we all did. But Jalen Brunson is becoming a certified superstar, right, with what he's doing. And shout out to our close friend, Jason Edwards, who is a huge Knicks fan. And as much as I couldn't stand it and listening to him in the 90s when they played the Heat and all that other nonsense and dealing with that, shout out to him. And he's probably loving this a lot. So in a weird way, I'm kind of rooting for the Knicks. Never thought I'd say that.
I do want the Knicks to win it. Because there is a part of me that still thinks, man, I really wonder what the Pistons could have done against them because of the matchup.
Yes.
Because what the Pistons can do with the Knicks, because they have that perimeter defense that can defend Brunson and everything that the Knicks do. And we saw that they took them to the limit last year in the playoffs. We saw with the Pistons. Now, like I said, the Knicks have kind of adjusted who they are and how they play, but the Pistons took it to them 30-point blowouts in the regular season. Man, I really wish we could have got that series because I think that would have been a long series. I absolutely think the Pistons would have gave them a better fight than what the Cavs did.
Sure. That's unfortunate in a way. Maybe it gives Pistons fans hope that like they are closer than maybe we think, could be.
Might only be a piece or 2 away. Yeah. That's another team that's going to have a fascinating offseason to see what they do. I try to take the next step forward and try to make another level up. So interesting time, Brian, in Detroit sports. And as we talked about, thanks again to Rogelio Castillo for joining us once again. A lot of great insight from him as we kind of dive deep into the Tigers as well as into the minor league system, as we're hopeful that we're in one of those another long, hot stretches for the Detroit Tigers. Had an incredible week this week, beating 2 first-place teams in the Tampa Bay Rays and the Seattle Mariners and taking 5 out of 6. But we'll see if it can continue. But that'll do it for tonight. For Coach Barnes, I'm Dan Murphy, and we'll see you again down the road.